The Boston Red Sox have had what some would say an underwhelming offseason so far, but can they do anything to change that mentality before the season starts? Find out on Locked On Red Sox.
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Gabby, former ESPN social media associate and current host of the Boston Balling podcast as well. And I am here to bring you the latest in all things Boston Red Sox, Monday through Friday, straight to your favorite podcast feed for free. And honestly, if it's free, you might as well take advantage of it, right? So start your day off the right way with Locked On Red Sox, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Welcome to another episode of the show today, where we're one day closer to spring training and sitting here wondering if the Red Sox have any other moves in mind to help improve this roster before the season starts. And I am here with somebody who could give us a little more insight into this topic and covers the Red Sox for MassLive. Christopher Smith, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you, Gabby?
I'm doing well, and I really appreciate you hopping on here and taking the time to speak with me.
Anytime.
So, obviously, like I mentioned before, this offseason has been one that I think for a lot of fans has been considered a bit of a letdown, especially with this whole full throttle thing and what they've been saying as an organization about how they were going to approach this offseason. And I think people were expecting a lot more to be done to improve this roster than what's been done so far. And I'm looking at the current roster and still seeing some holes. So what's your thoughts on how their offseason has been going so far?
Yeah, so I mean, you look at it and they have a worse roster right now than they did, on the final day of last season. I mean, you can look at it and they said their main priority this offseason was to improve the starting pitching. They've, taken Chris Sale and traded him. They have not re-signed James Paxton, and all they've done is added, Luis Giolito. So, I mean, you're trading out two starting pitchers for one, and you really haven't improved. I thought they were going to go get two or three starting pitchers. And so it's baffling in a way. Like, what were they thinking at the beginning of the offseason as opposed to what actually transpired? Did Craig Breslow know that he was going to be on, a certain budget? And there is a budget. I mean, you look at it and they were about a 225 million last year on their CBT payroll. And, that was below the $233 million, base threshold. And the base threshold's gone up to 237 million this year. And they plan to be below that number that they were last year. So they plan to be below 225 million. So I don't know how much further below, but right now they're at about 200 million. And so they have 25 maybe million of wiggle room, or maybe they only have 20. We don't know the exact payroll. I've heard that, it could be lower than, you would even think. And so, so I don't know how much wiggle room they have in terms of their budget, but it's just very confusing. I mean, you also look at, the offense is not as good as it was last year on this date that it was on the final day of the season. I mean, you get rid of Verdugo. Verdugo had his ups and downs, but, he was one of their better hitters last year. He could have made the All-Star team. He fell off in the second half, but and then, Justin Turner was such an important bat to that lineup. And so, he's gone. And so you bring in some guys, but you bring in Tyler O'Neill, who he's been on the IL 12 times in his career. And so you're relying on a guy that's been on the IL consistently, and guys like Abreu and potentially, so Abreu played a month. I mean, it's a very small sample size. Will Middlebrooks, was really good in 2012 when he played 3 months. He wasn't as good the next year when he played a full season. I'm not saying Abreu is not going to be a really good hitter someday. I'm just saying it's a lot to put on somebody that's so young. And then if Tyler O'Neill gets hurt, like he has continuously, then you might have to rely on 2 guys, that haven't had much major league experience at all, and Abreu and Rafaela. And so, it's just confusing to me. I think they do still need to add an outfielder that can rotate through that DH spot too. But right now it's kind of just confusing. Like, you say full throttle at the beginning of the offseason, and this is then the exact opposite.
Yeah, and I am wondering, do they understand what full throttle means? Do they think it means something different than what the rest of us think it means? And, you mentioned Justin Turner, and it's definitely disappointing to me seeing the deal that he signed with the Blue Jays and just saying, why would the Red Sox not really be interested in bringing him back? Because then reports were saying that Justin Turner and his camp reached out to the Red Sox, but they weren't really interested in a conversation. And I am such a big JT fan. I think from just a leadership standpoint and obviously his productivity on the field made the Red Sox a better team last year. And he was just such a big piece of what the Red Sox did last year. And that's a huge piece of the lineup that they haven't really made up for, nor does it seem like they're planning to replace that productivity in the lineup. And this whole philosophy Breslow has of rotating through the DH spot and just switching different position players into that role instead of having kind of somebody who's more of a consistent DH. What do you think of that philosophy? Do you think that's something that could work for them? Because I haven't seen a whole lot of teams really have that mindset.
Yeah, so I mean, you look at the 1 year the Red Sox tried to do that. It was between David Ortiz retiring in 2016, the Red Sox getting JD Martinez in 2018. And why did they get JD Martinez in 2018? I mean, the whole lineup was down. Mookie Betts' worst year with the Red Sox really was 2017, where he didn't have some of the protection in the lineup with David Ortiz or JD Martinez. His AL MVP, campaign, Mookie Betts, came when they got JD Martinez. So like a big bat like that takes, it takes the pressure off certain guys like Devers, and so it makes the lineup more complete. So yeah, I mean, and as I said, they're relying on some young guys. I mean, Vaughn Grissom too. I mean, he's at second base and he's only really played a very limited amount of, time in Major League Baseball. And so, they're relying a lot on what they have internally instead of, what they could have gotten. And it's funny, you look at, at winter weekend, Sam Kennedy was like, the right time, like they'll spend when the time is right. Well, you look at it, and what were their 2 worst teams that you've seen for the Red Sox have, over the past, decade and a half? It was 2012 and 2020. In both years after they won the World Series the year after 2012, and they made the ALCS the year after 2020. And it was because they went out and spent. So why is this the wrong time? You can quickly fix things, and they were in the AL wildcard, contention for a while. I know because I actually applied for, credentials. So, I mean, I wasn't expecting it, but they were close enough that I was like, well, I've got to apply, right? And
Yeah.
so, so I do have my my BBWA credential. It's hanging up somewhere around here. My 4-year-old daughter wears it around the house all the time. It has not been used, but it's the postseason of 2023 that it's somewhere around here. But yeah. So I mean, you can fix things really quick, and the way that they did that in 2012 into 2020. 2013 wasn't by signing a bunch of guys to, long-term deals. I mean, like, Victorino, Napoli, those were 3-year deals. I mean, reasonable deals. They got Gomes and Dempster on short deals. I think Dempster's was 2. And so why can't you do that, with this team? Why can't you make the Giolito signing like a couple more of those instead of just the, Lucas Giolito, so that that's what's confusing, is that there were guys on this market, to Oscar Hernandez, there were people that could have helped out the team that you wouldn't have had to pay for 4 or 5, 6 years that could have made the team, if you think, the core right here. I mean, yeah, you're looking at guys like, Roman Anthony and Kyle Teal and, Marcelo Meyer. They're a year away. So you're kind of looking at, well, maybe we'll spend when they're ready and stuff like that. But you do have a pretty good base that's in the major leagues right now that if you had spent a little money, you would have been competitive this year. And I don't look at their roster right now as competitive. However, that could change if, Garrett Whitlock goes out there and becomes, a number 2 starter and, Bayo progresses from where he was last year and Pavetta comes back to where he was in the second half, like when he changed a lot of things in his, repertoire and, different, things in his game and mechanics and stuff like that. And maybe he's a dominant pitcher. So there is a chance, right? We don't know, but right now it just doesn't look like they're going to be competitive when you compare them to, say the Yankees who went out and made big deals, right? They got Soto and so, yeah, it's kind of complex, it's kind of confounding, what's kind of going on.
Yeah, I mean, with the division they're in and the fact that they've finished in last place in that division 3 out of 4 years, you would think that there was some urgency there to try to make similar types of moves to be able to compete with this division. And you look at just this roster right now, and there's a lot of things that have to go right in order for them to be competitive. And I think they're almost relying too heavily on those things all going right to be able to be a team that can compete with the other teams in the AL East or really anybody in general. And that scares me a little bit because there's a lot of what ifs that come with that.
Yeah, and so you look at it you would have thought that they would have spent money this offseason because of the 3, last place finishes in 4 years or whatever, but also to get Craig Breslow's tenure off to a good start. You don't want fans being like, oh, this is just Heim Bloom 2.0, which I heard, or which somebody yelled at the winter weekend when he came out, and so you should have given him the opportunity to spend some money here. And, and you're looking at, I was actually saying this to my father yesterday, you're looking at the important thing is talent evaluation of starting pitching. They got Breslow because they want to get, their pitching on track and build this infrastructure. If you don't give them the money to do it, maybe he thinks Jordan Montgomery is the right guy. Maybe he doesn't, but does he have the money to make that decision? Right. There's been, does he have the money? Is he allowed to make the money on the call of Blake Snell? He might really like Blake Snell, but it's not within their budget. So are they giving him really the ability to do what he's supposed to do in evaluating the free agent talent? Because, at the end of the day, they're set a budget and he doesn't even if he likes the guy, even if he really likes the guy, they can't really get him because, they're not allowing him to make the calls and do what they've asked him to do. They're basically, the focus is more on build from within the pitchings, fix what's there and in the minor leagues, than instead of you like 2 pitchers on the market that cost some money. Well, you can go out and get them.
Yeah, I'm hard pressed to blame Breslow for a lot of what's gone on, and I really feel like it's more his higher ups, and they need to give him the freedom to do what he feels is necessary to improve this roster. And who knows really if it's more his philosophy or them, but either way, it's definitely been a disappointing offseason so far for sure. And coming up, we're going to be talking about a minor move the Red Sox did make after about a month of zero action. So I'm going to be getting Chris's thoughts on that next. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. I'm telling you, I know nothing about cars, but eBay Motors is an absolute lifesaver. So if you're anything like me, it's definitely for you too. You also should subscribe to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube because we've actually launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. So basically what this means is we are here for you covering all the top sports stories of the day 24/7, no matter where you are. We're the only network that has this as of right now. So head to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to that channel. So in speaking about the Red Sox offseason and what they've done so far or lack thereof, there hasn't been a whole lot to talk about or get excited about with this team. And a few hours ago, they made a small move that to me is more of a depth move in the outfield. They claimed Romy González off waivers and then DFA'd pitcher Zach Weiss in the process. And again, this is a minor move, but this is where we're at with the Red Sox right now in talking about moves that they do make. So what are your thoughts on this move? Do you think he's somebody that's going to primarily spend time in AAA, or do you think that he has a shot to compete for a roster spot? Because what's interesting about him is he's played a variety of different positions. So he could be somebody that they kind of play around with if need be, and he could fill in maybe in the infield or the outfield.
Yeah, I mean, you look at his minor league career and his major league career, he started at every position, except for catcher. So, every infield position, every outfield position. So obviously, the versatility is great. Right-handed bat, they need that. But, I mean, you look at it, and one of the big things Breslow said, too, in terms of at the first introductory press conference, what do you need? Starting pitching and a right-handed bat. I mean, Grissom's a right-handed bat, but really they have not done anything he said he was going to do. So I mean, this guy, I've really not know too much about him until today. I mean, look at he's got a 258 career hitter in the minors, 338 on base percentage, 222 in a limited time in MLB for a batting average. I mean, I just think that this is just a depth move, and he's one of those guys that's like the 38th, 39th, 40th guy on the roster where if you get somebody better comes up on waivers, then you can replace him with him. He'd be the first one to go. So I mean, yeah, I would look at him right now as, he could compete for a spot, a utility spot, but most likely he's going to, be at Worcester or, to start the season, or, they find somebody better ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting situation where they're at right now, especially in the outfield, because there's still some things they need to figure out with that outfield. I've been in the spot for a while of thinking they should move Yoshida to more of a DH type of role because his defense was a problem last year. And if they're trying to improve the defense overall as a team and look for somebody who can, play more of a DH type of person that maybe fills in the outfield sometimes, Yoshida to me is that guy. And then they can kind of make their starting outfield a little bit clearer. But it just seems like there's, not a whole lot of direction right now in terms of who they want to start in the outfield and what that's actually going to look like come opening day? Because you already mentioned his name, Abreu. This is somebody that has such a small sample size. And yes, it was a good small sample size. I really liked what I saw from him when he did get that opportunity last year. But we have no idea if that's actually how he is going to be as a player. So it's definitely, a questionable outfield all around. And you look at guys like Tyler O'Neill, you mentioned with the injuries. I really like Duran. I'm hoping he continues to improve in that way, but they need to figure out something with this outfield. And, my high hope positive side was hoping that they would have added a marquee name in the outfield by now. And then that just hasn't happened. So I'm just kind of wondering, yes, this is probably a depth move. He might not see any time on the field, but is this the only solution that they see to kind of figure out this outfield problem? And they're going to say, we added somebody as a depth move and we have somebody that can fill in the outfield if need be. So we should be all set now.
Yeah, I think they'll still be in the market for another outfielder. Duvall, obviously, the potential of coming back. And so, but, you look at it, you make an interesting point about Yoshida being the DH. I mean, you look at Suzuki with the Cubs between his first year and second year in, Major League Baseball, and the numbers went up significantly with Yoshida. He had a great first half, right? Like, I remember being in Chicago when they were playing at Wrigley Field to begin the second half. And we were talking about like, this guy's insane, like what he's doing. And he had like multi-hit streaks, like games, consecutive games of multi-hit streaks. No one had done it since Ted Williams in the Red Sox organization or something. And we were asking him questions about that. Then he tails off, obviously. And I think that, the whole, the whole season, the traveling is a lot more intense. The schedule is more intense than in Japan. And so, I think that he wore down. I think he'll be able to train properly, knowing certain things that went on this year. And I think he will have a better year offensively. He'll be more for the full season, I think, what you see Yoshida of what he was in the first half last year. And so I would say, yeah, that's a good idea, putting him at the DH spot. I mean, like, you look at Tyler O'Neill and he's won 2 Gold Gloves. He's primarily, I mean, not primarily, he's played almost all of his career in left field. And so, I mean, are you just going to Fenway, right field at Fenway is very tough, and if you haven't played this position, and Abreu's got a really good strong arm, but I wouldn't say he's the best defensive, outfielder yet. And so, you're looking at him, is he the right fielder? And, how does your defense look when you have that? And so, so it's very difficult to know like how they're going to at this point. Like it's interesting to like look and see like what could they do? Like, are they going to put Tyler O'Neill a lot in left field and where he's been and put Yoshida at the DH spot, or are they going to put O'Neill in right field and different things like that, and rotate more through the DH spot. And I really don't have. I think that I actually asked Cora this question at Winter Weekend. I was just like, you've got so many. Do you guys feel like you're banking too much or relying too much on, guys that are young and inexperienced, trading Verdugo and stuff, and not bringing a bat to replace, Turner? As I said, that makes it a very difficult situation for guys like Abreu. They're forced to have, maybe 400, 500 plate appearances this year. And so it's like, well, are you guys relying too much on that? And they think that they know what they have in these players. But maybe that's just them being positive. And, but I do think that they will probably, I would be surprised if they didn't add another outfielder. Duvall obviously is the name. Soler still is on the market, right? But I don't see him being a fit because of the money that he's going to demand.
Yeah, I mean, they really should and kind of have to at this point in order for me to feel a little bit better about the roster. There definitely is potential there for sure. I'm excited to see, Casas, the season he has in 2024. Bayo, another guy who is definitely developing in the right way and has so much potential. I feel, and I'm excited to see Andrew Bailey come in and work with this pitching staff. I think that was a great hire by the Red Sox. But like you said, obviously they see something in these current guys on the roster that gives them confidence that it's going to be a better season than we're thinking it's going to be because of the development of some of those guys. And obviously, hopefully we get a fully healthy season of Trevor Story, because if he's healthy, that'll help the infield defense out significantly, because obviously last year the infield defense was a major problem, and he does help the infield defense significantly when he's out there. And Vaughn Grissom's an interesting player to me because he's somebody who, we don't really know yet how he's going to look in a Red Sox uniform and how he's going to perform. But obviously they see something again in him that they can work with.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Trevor Story is going to be extremely important for him to stay healthy this year for a full year and be, that shortstop. And, it should give them more stability up the middle. I mean, they used so many different second basemen, so many different shortstops last year. To just have Grissom and, Story there on a regular basis, that solidifies the defense somewhat more. And obviously Story will help out with range of Devers and everything at third base. And he's just it's just really impressive defender just watching him, and the ability to just throw on the run and get to balls and then throw on the run. So it's that. But when you bring up the starting pitching too, and then the relying on guys like Whitlock and all that, the thing that we've seen is that it's unfortunate Houck gets hit in the face with the baseball, and we don't get to see a full year of what he can do in the rotation. He takes a large, obviously had to take a large period off, and then what could he have done if he had kept going, last year? What could we have not seen Whitlock, full year? It's just, in that hinders them, their progress and stuff, that they haven't, been able to get a foot. I mean, with Whitlock, I was looking at it the other day, is between the hip, and all these different things, we haven't really seen a healthy, Whitlock in the rotation for a full, season, or even an extended period. And so it's going to be, it's so important that these guys stay healthy and just show what they can actually do, because we don't really have an idea of what they can do for a full season.
Yeah, I mean, Garrett Whitlock especially, from what I've seen of him pitching, I've been more along the lines of I like him better out of the bullpen than I like him in the rotation. I think he has really good stuff, and it's better when he's not expected to pitch a lot of innings in a game. I think his stuff is best suited for a 2, maybe 3 inning type of reliever role. I just think that's where he's suited best. But again, like you said, it's hard to fully evaluate his time in the rotation because he hasn't really had a fair chance to show if he's capable of being a consistent full-time starter.
Yeah, I would agree with you in that Whitlock stuff is probably if you look at the splits, I mean, they're significantly better as a reliever than they are as a starting pitcher. And so, obviously he's shown a lot more out of the bullpen. And I would have gone into this offseason more if I was the Red Sox, saying, okay, Whitlock, he's going to be in the bullpen next year. He's rotation depth if we need it, right? Instead of, relying on him to be a starting pitcher. It's just very surprising they did. And with Houck too, I mean, I think Houck's actually, his stats were very good when he was in the 8th and 9th inning. He was closing for a stretch. He actually has, I think his ERA is just over 4 in the rotation. So, but he so he has pitched pretty well in the rotation when he's been in there, but it's innings with him. Like, he doesn't get deep into games and stuff like that. And as I said, like last year, it's difficult when you come back from a 2-month stretch or whatever where you're not pitching to then go deep into games, right? So it's not completely his fault, but young pitchers struggle with this. I remember John Lester struggling with it at a time, getting deep into games when he first started out. And so it's interesting. I look at those guys as probably better bullpen guys. I actually, if you would say who's the best young starter in the rotation, I would say Cutter Crawford, like over a guy that was a first-round pick in Houck and, Whitlock, who has shown so much potential. I would still say that Cutter Crawford has the stuff and the ability to kind of like, give you 6 and be a good, back-end starter as opposed to the other two. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they'll show out this year and, we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of we'll see, and that's what worries me the most because that was definitely the philosophy last year, too, especially with the starting rotation. Just lots of question marks, and there still are question marks. So, because of that, coming up, we're going to be just giving our prediction on what we expect for a record for the 2024 Boston Red Sox based on everything that we've talked about. Do you love sports betting? Is it like your favorite thing in the world, or are you thinking about getting into it? If so, FanDuel is the place for you. Happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is all about scoring the best seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks, and placing some super bets. I love Super Bowl Sunday. It's a great way to get together with friends, hang out, watch the game. The commercials are always funny. Hopefully Usher does a good job with the halftime show, and I just love football. So you can make any bet that you want on that game this year. I mean, an anytime touchdown, definitely Travis Kelce's a safe choice. So there's a lot of different possibilities of things that you can make on FanDuel, which is great. That's why I love it as a sports betting app for you. FanDuel has so many ways for you to end the season with a W, or 2, or 3. Not only can you bet on who will win Super Bowl 58, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored, and so much more. New customers join today and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. I'm a big fan of FanDuel, as is my fiance. He's won quite a bit of money using it, and he just got into it recently. So that could also be you. And also don't forget to subscribe to Locked On Sports today on YouTube so you can have access to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. It's so much less time consuming than having to catch up on all of your sports content on Twitter. So subscribe to that channel today and you can get caught up on everything. Obviously, the 2024 Boston Red Sox and where they stand right now are not in the best spot in terms of feeling like they are going to be the most competitive team this year. So in talking about expectations for the upcoming season, what's kind of your general ballpark of how many games you think this team is going to win if they were to go into opening day with this roster and not make any more moves?
So if you look at last year, as I said, they have a worse roster than last year. And, as it is right now, and they won 78 games last year. However, that last month was a disaster. So that team was better than a 78, win team, talent-wise. I mean, they went 8 and 19 in September. They did win that one game in October. So 9 and 19 over the final month. Pretty much consistently throughout the year, they were a 500 team. So you have to look at it in that respect, like when you're comparing, this team to last year's team and the talent and everything. So I think they'll get better pitching this year in terms of we don't know. Cause as I said, Giolito's what they've added, but they've also subtracted Sale and Paxton. So, but I think that, Bailey, the addition of Bailey is going to help that, some of these guys figure things out, and even in the bullpen, different things. I think that they'll they'll be a better pitching team than they were last year, both, in the starting rotation and the bullpen. So I think they're pretty much the same team that they were last year. And that team wasn't a 78 loss team. If things just went off the rails in September, they probably should have been an 82, 83, 84 win team. So I give this team like 83, 84 wins. They're about just over 500 for me. And so that's the way I look at it. Until they prove me otherwise, then, I just think they're going to be kind of, they are what they are, kind of a mediocre team. Like they played from, April through, the end of August last year until they became a complete disaster the final month.
Yeah, that final month of the season last year was such a drag. I was like, this is just such bad baseball that I'm watching right now, and this is just so disappointing because I was at that point like, all right, I'm ready for the season to be over so we can make some big changes here. And then,
It's funny because the team that I root for, the Syracuse basketball team, is struggling right now. So I'm like, can we get to the end of the season to get to the transfer portal? I'm done with this season. I just want to see what next year looks like. And that's what I'm sure like Red Sox fans are thinking. And then they go in, and if Syracuse basketball does nothing in the transfer portal that, excites me, that's what it's going to feel like. That's what Red Sox fans feel like right now. So it's like, I totally understand it. It was like, get to the end of the season and then see what a productive offseason they could do, how they can improve this team, and they really have not. So it should be frustrating for fans.
Oh, absolutely. Hopefully they can change our mentality, but I'm kind of with you. It's been frustrating for sure. So we'll see what happens, but I really appreciate you sitting down and chatting with me today.
Anytime.
I will definitely have you back on again. Hopefully it's about, a more positive outlook on the team at that point, but only they can help us out with that.
All right. Well, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for tuning into the show. As always, go Red Sox. I will catch you next time.